have a second camera on board as well that recorded this launch and inflation of the parachute. You might notice the pattern that's on the parachute here. Distinct patterns are useful in helping us determine the clocking or orientation of the parachute. Also, the contrasting sections can be useful in tracking different positions of the parachute, different portions of the parachute as it inflates. So it's especially useful when we have multiple cameras, as we do here, and are trying to track features in the parachute inflating. In addition to enabling incredible science, we hope our efforts and our engineering can inspire others. Sometimes we leave messages in our work for others to find for that purpose. So we invite you all to give it a shot and show your work. Let's move on to the rover download camera and take a look at that in a little bit more detail. So if we start that up, you can see the heat shield falling away very nicely and symmetrically. Pausing here, we can take a look at what we see on the heat shield. First, we see the medley components on the heat shield. You can see the electronics box and the gold wires that lead to all the various sensors that measure the aerodynamics and heating during the entry portion of flight. We can also see some white flecks in different places, both on the heat shield and free flying, which are likely frost that accumulated on the heat shield. That heat shield is really, really cold during cruise, so it's not at all unexpected to see some of that frost appearing on the heat shield on the inside.
Mohon maaf untuk gangguan tadi. Sebenarnya kita sudah live dari awal tadi, cuman memang karena saya tidak tahu ya, pada dini hari ini tiba-tiba internetnya mati. Tadi untung saja ada pelayanan 24 jam sehingga bisa dipulihkan kembali, dan untung saja kita belum terlewat jauh dari proses pendaratan asli Rover Perseverance. Ini kita sedang membahas tentang berbagai bagian-bagian. Ini tampilan dari asli ya, tampilan video yang di stop tadi. Nah, ini bisa kita lihat bagian bawah pelindung panas dilepas oleh Rover Perseverance, dan ini adalah tampilan Mars secara langsung yang diambil oleh kamera dari Perseverance. Bisa kalian lihat, terlihat berbagai kawah yang dilihat dari atas. Sekali lagi saya mohon maaf atas ketidaknyamanannya tadi. Kita kembali. Bisa dilihat, ini adalah penampakan asli Mars yang di video langsung. Jadi ini sedang proses waktu turun menggunakan parasut, teman-teman ya. Belum menggunakan sky crane atau jetpack yang merangkul Perseverance. Dan ini detik-detik sebelum pelepasan Perseverance dengan sky crane atau jetpacknya dan mendarat di lokasi kawah Jazero. Nah, ini sudah mendarat. Ini kita lihat bagaimana debu-debu tersapu oleh angin dari sky crane atau jetpack yang membawa Perseverance dan mulai menurunkan si Perseverance. Kita lihat akan dari kamera yang terpasang di sky crane setelah ini. Kita akan melihat ini adalah bagian bawah tadi ya.
So that was the rover's view looking down. Let's take a look at the descent stage view looking down as well.
Sekali lagi saya mohon maaf atas gangguannya tadi. Nah, ini bagian Perseverance saat turun menggunakan benang nilon dari sky crane atau jetpack yang membawa Perseverance. Ini adalah tampilan asli. Sekali lagi, ini adalah tampilan asli, bukan ilustrasi, bukan CGI. Ini tampilan asli dari kamera sky crane atau jetpack yang merangkul Perseverance sebelum mendaratkannya. Dan ini adalah detik-detik proses di mana sky crane mendaratkan Perseverance. Bisa kalian lihat bagian atas dari Rover Perseverance tampak begitu jelas, dan bagian bawahnya Perseverance ini bisa kalian lihat permukaan Mars yang tersapu oleh tekanan yang ditimbulkan oleh sky crane atau helikopter yang membawa Perseverance. Ini adalah video asli. Nanti bakal kita recap semuanya. Nah, bisa lihat debu-debu yang tersapu oleh tekanan dari sky crane. Ini kita coba menjelaskan sebisanya ya, agar kalian juga paham bagaimana beberapa proses pendaratannya tadi.
So now let's take a look at the rover upload camera. So now staring up at the descent stage from the rover. So here we go. We got a really close-up look at the descent
Bentar,
stage.
ini
and
belum
we can start
jelas.
rolling that. You can see the descent
Oh,
stage as the rover begins to fall away
ini
from it.
bagian
You
atas.
see the
Jadi
effect
ini
of
yang
that rover
membawa
also having
Perseverance.
mobility to play.
Ini dinamakan
So
sky
pausing
crane.
here, the first thing that most people will probably notice is
Jadi
that
ini
there's
yang
no,
merangkul
no plumes or
Perseverance
no
sebelum
visible smoke or anything else coming out of the
menerjunkannya ke
hydrants at the corner of the
permukaan
descent stage.
Mars.
That's expected. Hydrazine doesn't really
Jadi itu adalah sky crane-nya. Ini jadi tampilan dari kamera Perseverance sesaat sebelum turun dan menggapai permukaan Mars.
So I can promise you those engines are on though. One thing you can see in the Earth testing we do is that the thrust chambers of those engines get kind of hot and glow pink. And you can kind of see
Bisa kalian lihat sendiri.
Especially if you look at the engine at the very top right of this image.
Ini adalah sky crane yang membawa Perseverance. Sekali lagi saya ingatkan, ini adalah video asli atau tampilan asli dari proses landing. Jadi buat yang kemarin tanya-tanya itu ilustrasi-ilustrasi, nah ini kita sudah mendapatkan tampilan asli dari proses landingnya Perseverance di permukaan Mars.
That are supporting the weight of the rover there at the bottom now of this image, and that umbilical again transferring data back and forth between the descent stage and the rover.
Ini adalah proses penurunan Perseverance ya, bisa kalian lihat ada itu semacam benang. Kalau saya lihat kemarin keterangannya adalah benang nilon ya. Ini menurunkan si Rover Perseverance. Sebelum akhirnya nanti sky crane ini atau jetpack terbang menjauh untuk menghindari wilayah penjelajahan dari Perseverance. Kita lihat tertutup oleh debu ya. Nah ini penjelasan juga kemarin kenapa foto pertama terlihat buram. Itu karena tertutup oleh lapisan debu yang ditimbulkan oleh tekanan dari si sky crane ini. Itulah kenapa kemarin foto pertama dari Mars yang berhasil dikirimkan nampak buram. Nah ini saat sky crane meluncurkan kembali untuk menjauh dari wilayah penjelajahan Perseverance. Kita dengarkan lagi penjelasan dari salah satu anggota tim misi dari Perseverance.
With that engine thrust. So we sent that descent stage off to the northwest, which Jessica will show you about in a little bit. So I can and have watched those videos for hours and keep seeing new stuff every time. So I invite you all to do that too. So now I'll turn it over to Justin, who will talk to you a little bit about the images we've been taking on the ground.
All right, thank you, Al. I'm Justin Mackey. I'm the Mars 2020 Perseverance imaging scientist here, and I develop imaging systems at JPL. And when Dave asked me to help out with the EDL cam development about 6 years ago, I was really excited about it. I knew it would be challenging and interesting, and even possibly spectacular, but I had no idea that it would be this amazing, and we are so happy and proud, and I just want to thank Dave and Matt for just giving us the leadership and giving us the chance to do this. Like Matt and Dave and Jennifer and Rick and others on the project, I've actually worked on all 5 of the NASA rover missions, and as part of my job, I review.
Sekali lagi saya ingatkan kembali ya, tadi mohon maaf, sangat-sangat mohon maaf atas terjadinya kesalahan sistem kami. Tadi sebenarnya kita sudah live bareng NASA, jadi seharusnya tadi sudah pukul 2 tepat kita sudah live. Tapi karena gangguan yang secara tiba-tiba, sinyal kita hilang, kita tidak ada akses internet, jadinya kita off. Tapi untungnya kita sekarang sudah tersambung kembali dan belum tertinggal jauh dari live NASA. Tadi sudah saya jelaskan tentang beberapa proses landingnya disertai dengan video asli pendaratannya. Nah itu adalah yang tanya kamera yang dimiliki oleh Perseverance, ada right navcam dan left navcam atau navigasi kamera. Ada juga dipasang yang namanya supercam di sini ya. Tapi kita belum jelas bagian yang mana karena saya juga tidak terlalu hafal untuk bagian instrumennya. Nanti mungkin bakal diterangkan bagian-bagian instrumennya. Dan buat yang nggak tahu atau ketinggalan info, nanti bakal kita langsung recap setelah tayangan live kali ini. Jadi nanti jangan gak usah khawatir buat yang belum nonton live-nya atau ketinggalan. Setelah live kali ini, langsung bakal kita bikin recapnya untuk kalian semua. Nah ini adalah foto kembali yang diambil oleh navcam bagian kiri atau kanan ini. Ini adalah tampilan foto yang belum dipublish, dan kita bisa lihat sekarang bagaimana tampilan dari Mars diambil dari kamera bagian atas atau navcam dari Perseverance. Kita bisa lihat bagaimana pemandangan Mars dengan pemandangan gurun sejauh mata memandang. Ini adalah bagian bawah, terlihat lebih detail dari beberapa foto yang dibagikan kemarin. Terlihat dua roda dari Perseverance yang menyentuh tanah Mars ya. Bisa kalian lihat beberapa batuan dari Mars terlihat begitu jelas dan lumayan detail. Nah, ini panorama juga. Ini sudah diperbaiki oleh NASA ya. Karena sebelumnya yang di-share oleh NASA di websitenya adalah kualitas raw atau masih mentah. Bahasa kasarnya masih mentahan. Dan ini adalah pemandangan Mars yang sebelumnya belum pernah kita lihat kalau tanpa Perseverance. Nah, ini adalah bagaimana panorama Mars, tepatnya di kawah Jezero. Ini pemandangan ini belum pernah kita lihat. Kita kembali lagi. Nah, ini adalah kamera navcam bagian atas tadi yang diperlihatkan oleh tim ilmuwan NASA tadi. Nah, ini adalah panorama lagi. Ini kayaknya lebih luas ya. Ya, ini yang lebih besar pikselnya pasti. Ini yang paling bagus ya, dengan panorama yang sangat luas dari Mars. Wow. Ini seperti foto dari Curiosity yang beresolusi 1,8 miliar piksel. Tapi kita belum mendapatkan info berapa piksel kamera yang berapa piksel resolusi yang dihasilkan oleh kamera Perseverance tadi. Oke, kita kembali ke NASA.
Find your favorite picture and make it your screen background. And then the last image that I just wanted to point out is the first image, one of the first images from the Mastcam Z camera. This is another next generation imaging system on the rover. Jim Bell is the PI. I'm the deputy PI for this, working with our.
Jadi saya bakal jelaskan semampunya agar kalian bisa paham tentang beberapa panorama indah yang sebelumnya belum pernah kalian saksikan. Jadi setelah adanya foto ini, kalau kalian masih bilang rekayasa, animasi atau apalah itu, ya sudah, kita sudah tidak bisa menjelaskan lagi karena ini adalah penjelasan dari NASA.
And then just in the middle, to the left of that black instrument, that's the rover upload camera. That's the camera that actually took the video of the sky crane.
Untuk kali ini adalah tampilan asli atau citra asli dari Mars yang diambil langsung oleh Perseverance. Jadi bukan lagi sebuah ilustrasi atau animasi yang ditampilkan. Nanti setelah live kali ini, saya akan langsung membuat recap video live tadi, proses pendaratannya dengan materi video asli dari Perseverance sebelum landing di Mars kemarin. Buat yang ketinggalan tadi, saya mohon maaf, sangat-sangat mohon maaf. Kita semua para admin mohon maaf karena ada gangguan sinyal yang tiba-tiba menyerang saat live mau mulai. Kita tunggu lagi beberapa media NASA yang di-share.
Everybody has been experiencing seeing all these images from the surface, and as they come down, we're immediately sharing them, and everybody clapping and smiles all around. Great camera suite. So I am happy to report that Perseverance is healthy and continuing with activities as we have been planning them over the first few sols on the surface. To date, which is really only just 3 sols of activities and one more, and coming up later this afternoon, we've executed 5,000 commands. So lots of instructions to the vehicle for her to perform, and having everything come back exactly how we've been wanting it to, with respect to our health checkouts and our instrument checkouts. So things have been going well. A couple key highlights. So we have fired and released our launch lock restraints to allow LUAR mechanisms to be deployed. We saw the remote sensing mast, but one of those also being the high gain antenna. Now, this is important for the high gain antenna to be deployed because it increases our uplink rate to the rover. And so it will allow us to send a higher volume of instructions to Perseverance and allow her to perform more involved activities over the days to come. Additionally, with respect to our communication, we have established a strong communication link with all of our relay orbiters and our partners, the Mars Reconnaissance Orbiter, the MAVEN Orbiter, Trace Gas Observer, the TGO, and Odyssey spacecraft. And so we thank those teams and are happy to be able to use those assets to relay all of the information that all these beautiful images that we are looking at today. The remote sensing mast motion checks were nominal and as expected, and all of our instruments have gone through their initial checkouts, and we're happy to report that they are all performing nominally and as expected. Now, when I say nominal, it really means fantastic, because we can't wait to continue to use this payload suite. Our backup computer was turned on yesterday, and that was in preparation for our upcoming flight software transition, which we will be performing over the next few days. And the Ingenuity helicopter has also been checked out, and we have performed a battery charging event, which we will continue to perform over the weeks to come in preparation for that aspect of the mission. But looking ahead, we are excited to be on our surface flight software. This is a much more surface capable, a lot more capabilities for the surface mission as part of this flight software load. It will take us a few days to transition, but once we're on that load, it will allow us to do further in-depth checkouts of the instrument, as well as deploy the robotic arm and exercise some of the turret items that you see in this image. So you can see that we have our coring drill in the center, our Pixel and Sherlock instruments mounted to the side, and that black tank is to support the gas dust removal tool, which will remove dust from the surfaces that we will be inspecting later. So coming up here, the wheels, if you noticed in the image now, are off to the side. We will be performing a wiggle. We'll straighten those up. We'll do a short drive. And as I mentioned, deploy the robotic arm, and then continue with further in-depth checkouts. So we are very excited to be happily on the surface and exercising our system and looking for what's ahead. So going back to our partnership with the larger Mars spacecraft and science teams and community, we're really excited that the MRO spacecraft, Mars Reconnaissance Orbiter, and the HiRISE team was able to find our hardware on the surface of Mars. And so if you see in this image, if the next pop-up, you can see that we have the descent stage, the parachute, and the heat shield all here in this image. With a few stats here, the descent stage is about 700 meters away from where Perseverance is on the surface.
Beberapa bagian-bagian yang sudah dibuang dari Perseverance, ada parasut dan backseal, ada descent stage, headshield, dan Perseverance di bagian bawah. Jadi semua saling berjauhan ya, untuk agar tidak mengganggu. Nah, ini adalah foto asli. Ini mungkin kemungkinan dari wahana orbiter ya, yang memotret beberapa bagian dari Perseverance yang sebelumnya membantu dalam proses pendaratan. Buat yang tanya, jangan khawatir ya, nanti bakal tetap kita kasih recap pada kalian semua. Jadi setelah video ini nanti selesai atau live-nya, kita akan langsung recap.
I think we probably have overloaded your visual sense for a little bit, so we're going to do something a little bit different, and I'm going to have some fun here for a second.
Oke, kita kembali ke NASA.
And I'm going to talk to you now with this. This is the microphone that was part of the EDO camera system. When the EDO cam system was first envisioned, it was set up as just a bunch of cameras to capture some amazing imagery on the surface of Mars. And about a year or so after it was first conceived, I got a phone call, another call from Matt. After talking to headquarters, asked the question, could we possibly put a microphone as part of our EDL camera system? So we worked with the team, we took a look, and sure enough, it was something that we could do. And so we started off that detailed design and identifying a microphone that would work for us and getting it onto the vehicle. About a year after this first started, I was giving a tour at JPL. And I happened to mention to the group that I was giving the tour to that the decision had come down and we were working to actually include a microphone onto the vehicle. And after the tour was done, a gal came up to me and she said some things to me that I won't forget anytime soon. She said, I'm super excited that you guys are going to try to put a microphone onto the rover and get it to the surface of Mars. And I was very appreciative. And I asked her afterwards, I said, I'm curious, why is it that this relates to you so much? And her response was that her sister was visually impaired. She was not able to see these images that we saw earlier or that we sent down in the past. And while she tries to describe them to her, she felt that she just can't quite capture that same sense of amazement that she gets when she gets them visually. And that by actually getting a microphone onto the surface of Mars, the hope was that she'd be able to experience things on Mars the same way that she was when she actually looked at them. And that stuck with me. We continued to work super hard to make sure that this microphone would work. And that's part of the reason we were disappointed why it didn't work when we actually went and did our entry, descent, and landing sequence. I wish I had actually captured that individual's name. I would love to reach out to her now and say, we've done it. I hope your sister is enjoying it. Because what I'm going to show you in a second, or what you're going to hear in a second, is actually the first sounds being recorded from the surface of Mars. So there are two microphones on the Perseverance vehicle. There's this microphone here, which is part of the entry, descent, and landing system. And there's a second microphone that is on the SuperCam instrument. And we're counting on both of these instruments, recording some absolutely amazing sounds from the surface of Mars. So with that, I invite you now to, if you would like to close your eyes and just imagine yourself sitting on the surface of Mars and listening to the surroundings. If I could have the first one, please. So that gentle whirl that happens in the background, that is a noise made by the rover. But yes, what you did hear 10 seconds in was an actual wind gust on the surface of Mars, picked up by the microphone and sent back to us here on Earth. The analysis indicates that was around a 5 meter per second type of wind gust. So we can sit here now and actually tell you that we have recorded sounds from the surface of Mars. So we have a second one, which basically further reduces the noise of the rover, so you can just hear what the wind would sound like on Mars. And once again, I invite you to sit back and have a listen to what it would sound like to be on Mars. It's cool. It's really neat, overwhelming, if you will. I can't remember what I was going to go and say next. So looking forward to doing some amazing things with the microphones going forward. We need to work with the ops team. There's some great science that they're looking to do. We're hopeful that we continue to use these microphones, both the SuperCam microphone and the EDL cam microphone, to capture sounds, perhaps the rocks interacting with the surface. SuperCam is going to use theirs to get some great data of them zapping rocks. So as you've heard and will continue to hear, we're just beginning to do amazing things on the surface of Mars. And now Ken is going to talk to you a little bit about the science that we've done to date and what they're looking forward to doing as we continue to move forward.
Thanks, Dave. And I'll start by just taking this opportunity to say to Matt, Dave, Al, and everybody else on this fantastic team, thank you for the ride of a lifetime. That is just incredible, what we've seen today and what I'm sure we'll continue to see as the mission unfolds. So with all the focus on these spectacular videos and audio, we wanted to make sure to remind you that there's plenty of science going on already, with hundreds of team members poring over every new image. So if we can get the first of those images, as you'll see in this NavCam frame, we start with what may seem like very basic observations: light rocks, dark rocks, holy rocks. That's holy with an E. We use these very generic terms at this early stage until we have more data that allow us to test our hypotheses and make more confident interpretations. Follow along with the mission, and you'll see that this is a theme. As we get closer, our view of Mars continues to resolve and a coherent story emerges. Next image, please. Finally, I just want to briefly point out that we are finding real science value in these EDLCam videos. Here you can see a beautiful new perspective on the Jezero Delta. And if we can get the next image, also a new perspective on some of the beautiful stratigraphy around our landing site, which is up near on the far right side of this image. So now, to put all of this in context for us, I'll hand it over to Dr. Thomas Zurbuchen.
Well, what we've seen here today is really nothing short of amazing. You know, and perhaps you've had moments like this before. Some of you have told me that I was too young to remember, but they had a moment like that, for example, when they observed the first landing on the moon. They had moments like that where it felt that we took a big leap, not just in this case because of at JPL or at NASA, but a big leap as humanity. Of course, it's a leap that was enabled by work over decades, and on this mission for close to a decade. So what's possible today, or what feels possible, is different even than yesterday. It's how it feels to make history, and that's how I feel today. I'm so moved by this. Wow. The video of Perseverance descent and landing, and the amazing panorama and the first wide landscape shot of Jezero crater seen with human eyes, and the first Martian sounds are the closest you can get to landing on Mars without putting on a pressure suit. That video, I believe, should become mandatory viewing for young people who not only want to explore other worlds and build spacecraft to take them there, but also want to be part of diverse teams achieving all the audacious goals of our future. At the center of that is a team, and I'll ask for the next image. You should know, I met this team. I see me there in a dark suit next to Dr. Laurie Glaze, the Planetary Division Director, and Al, he just talked to you, is on his knee in there, and he entered the Ascent and Landing team, and we met him just hours before that historic landing. And I love this picture because, of course, the event today demonstrates that the human aspect of exploration. And that is, of course, every reason for what we can do at NASA, and also why we do things. The video and audio images here provided to us are from the surface of Mars, and sometimes we forget as we look at that. Well, Robert shouldn't get all the fun. We want to make sure that all of us on Earth see and feel what it's like to be on Mars and explore other worlds. I'm so excited for the more than 1 million students who joined the Mars Student Challenge, and the many more across the world who will be inspired by these images released today and even yesterday. Their journey is also just the beginning. Just imagine Perseverance sitting on a hill, recording the next Martian landing with a cargo that is basically a rocket, and then the first from another world with samples bound for Earth that are collected by Perseverance now in the near future. Imagine follow the entry, descent, and landing of the first human crew on the planetary surface sometimes in the future. These future historic events, which I'm confident will happen, will be enabled by women and men working in diverse teams. Imagine the goals we can achieve together. So what is possible? Sometimes to address that question, it's good to look back and think where we've come from, just like my friend Mike did earlier. We've been on a journey, both as a human race for quite a while now, and I don't want to show this next image of Sojourner, of the Pathfinder mission, which was designed for 7 souls or Martian days or so, maybe 30, ultimately lasted for 85 Earth days in 1997. I remember that really distinctly. A true Pathfinder indeed. It, weighed 23 pounds and returned a surprising amount of data back to Earth and a surprising amount of science for many scientists, I must say. Some people didn't expect quite that much, and that's what happens sometimes too when you innovate, just like we've seen here. We've grown from that seed. Now Perseverance is the size of a small car, and it's ready for us for the next shine leaps. And here's a picture that we're putting up that is one of the many pictures that we're releasing. And of course, it's a picture, one of my absolute favorites, and that's a picture of the sample caching system on there, because it's that sample caching system that will connect this mission to the samples that will bring back to Earth and other historic feed we're working on. This system is on the surface of Mars now. I remember distinctly looking at it before we packed it up from JPL and moved it over. Then, of course, launched it from the top of a rocket. This, my friends, is one of the indelible moments in NASA's history where what we can see and what we can learn and what we can hope for in the future and the extraordinary emotions that makes it feel all of us coming together. That human element will fuel our future at Mars, which is bright indeed. And it will fuel the dreams of a new generation that will return to Mars and also study the samples that we will eventually bring home. I'm so grateful to this team and literally the thousands, both at JPL and within the US and around the world, to all of you who have engaged in this mission. As has been noted, the raw image pipeline is opening up. Please go take a look at these data and play with them, especially those of you, the children and the youth that have signed up to our educational campaign. What can you find in these pictures? And who's going to compose the first piece of music with actual Mars sound? Mike, Matt, Jennifer, Al, many of you leaders, I could not be more proud of both you and your team. On behalf of our entire NASA leadership team, a heartfelt and a proud thanks to you. For the record, Matt, I'm so glad for your idea about these cameras. We will learn a lot from that, much more than we ever expected. And of course, this is just a start. For the surface team, the real work starts now to evaluate the surrounding and start a plan and our trajectory across Jezero Crater. It's a big team and there are lots of discussions, but that's science in action. Stay with us. There is much more amazement to come. Back to you, Raquel.
Thank you, Thomas. And we'll now move on to your questions. Remember, if you are a member of the media on the phone line, you can press *1 to get into the queue. If you're on social media, you can tag questions with the hashtag Countdown to Mars. Now, starting on the phone line is Bill Harwood from CBS News.
Yeah, hi. I guess this is for Al or maybe for Matt. I mean, other than the loose spring you guys saw in the heat shield, is there anything at all in that video that looked off nominal? I mean, you know, it looked like it was almost textbook. And I'm not saying that just to, I don't know, give you free praise, but I didn't see, you know, I don't see anything like that. So is there anything? Thanks.
I can take that one. We've been poring over those videos and looking for anything that could be wrong, and also looking at the rest of the data. And we did have a pretty clean run through entry, descent, and landing. There were a couple of bits of the parachute lid that came off. Some of that was expected. In fact, we knew that there was some risk of that as well. And there was, if you look at the video, you can actually see a chunk. That's the radome. It's a cover for one of the low gain antennas we used during cruise and also during part of EDL. That came off. We had hoped that it wouldn't, and we tried to restrain it a little bit better, but we knew that it was a risk that it might. So that's something we noticed that's on there as well. There's a couple other little things that we've been taking a look at, but I think you're in general right that the entry, descent, and landing system behaves as expected, and it did what it had to do, especially given, and a big shout out to the terrain relative navigation system, which put us down in the safest spot that was available to us. The places that we had to choose from weren't great if we didn't have something like terrain relative navigation. So yeah, the landing system worked great.
Great, thanks, Al. And up next, we have Marcia Dunn from the Associated Press.
Yes, hi. Wonderful video. I'm just wondering, did the JPL team get to see snippets coming down of the video, and then, or did you have to wait until this 1 minute video was put together? What was the reaction when you first saw the video and laid eyes on it? And for David, why do you think the mic didn't work during descent? Thank you.
I can say a couple words about the first part. I had trouble leaving this mission support area this week just because I kept waiting for every little bit of information to come back from, particularly from these cameras, but from the vehicle in general. And I can tell you, every time we got something, people were overjoyed, giddy. They were like kids, you know, in a candy store. You know, we'd get a thumbnail, which literally is just a really low-res, blobby-looking thing of one of those videos that came down first, and we'd just be falling on the floor excited with what we were seeing, and that's before even the high-res came. You know, there's a lot of people that have contributed to this entry, descent, and landing system. Our chief engineer, Adam Stelzner, happens to be here in the studio. He was kind of the father of the sky crane system. This started 15 years ago for him. He and his team have never seen this system operate before, not even on the Earth, because we can't test it on the Earth. So this is the first time we've had a chance as engineers to actually see what we designed. And I just can't, it's hard for me to express just how emotional it was and how exciting it was for everybody as we got this information down. I'll turn it over to Dave to say a couple words.
Hey Dave, before you say that, can I just chime in on the first image? This is Justin. I will say, when we get these first images from any of these imaging systems, the test images never look as good as the real thing. It's not even close. In fact, it's very hard to simulate a lot of these things, especially these, you know, sky cranes and things. And so the images that we normally see during test programs are, you know, there's always like a ladder in the background, or the lighting's never quite right, or there's a car. In the case of the EDO cams, we have these big targets out in parking lots, and we were dodging cars to try to do our tests and things. And so that moment that you get these images from Mars, it's just kind of an electric feeling where it just all just snaps into place, and you get these pictures that are just like perfectly, you know, they're pictures of Mars that you can never simulate here on Earth. And I think that we all experience that, especially after we go through months and months of testing, and the images don't really look that great. And, you know, people get skeptical, like, are these cameras really that great? Because, you know, that looks like a garage or something. So it's just amazing to get these pictures, and I think we all feel that way, because we're all seeing pictures of insides of labs and everything, and they're never that great. But it's amazing to get these photos from Mars. Okay.
Yeah, I'll give you my take. So Thursday evening and Friday, when the data started to come down and we kind of realized what we had, I was sitting at home and my phone started to go off, and I was getting FaceTimes from people who were in the MSA, and what was happening was that they were starting to show them on the monitors that we have hanging on the wall, and people were turning their phones around and saying, "Grul, you got to see this reaction," and people were just jumping up and down and giddy and ecstatic, and it was a great feeling. I mean, from where I was sitting, I not only was excited to see these videos and what we had captured, it was also the fact that a lot of people had put in a lot of effort in to make this system work. And to actually reward that effort and to pay it back and get this excitement going, it made me super happy. I was glad to see that all the hard work, all the dedication had come in, and that everyone was just excited about not only what we had captured, but also what this mission could do going forward. So, it was a great feeling. It was a feeling I won't forget for quite some time. And then regarding the question about the microphone, we started to look at it. What we think happened is that there was a communication error between the device that is responsible for digitizing the analog signals that the microphone picked up and then passing them back to the computer that actually stores all the data. We're not exactly sure why it happened. It could have been a fact that it was just so much data streaming into the system. We tested it, but you know, obviously everything's a little bit different on Mars than we actually have here on the ground. So we were pretty quickly able to determine we didn't think there was a hardware issue with the microphone, which is why we were able to approach the project and get their concurrence to try to turn the microphone on then on that Sol 2 boundary. It's just unfortunate that that error happened during the EDL, and we just weren't able to record any of the data that we generated during the sequence.
All right, thanks. And up next we have Chris Davenport from the Washington Post.
Hi, thanks for taking the time and for showing this. I really appreciate it. I wonder if you could talk a little bit about the cameras that were used to record the video. I understand they were specially designed, maybe by a commercial company called FLIR Systems. Just curious to know, like, what goes into, you know, designing a camera that's sustaining the G's, the blast of the thrusters, everything that it's got to go through to capture that images. Thanks.
Okay, so the cameras were originally purchased from a company called Point Grey, which was then bought out by FLIR. And I can tell you that the modifications we made to the camera were minimal. This was not a camera specifically designed for use on Mars. You can purchase the same camera off the internet for whatever applications you might have for it. The only things we did is we actually added some bonding material on the inside to try to make sure that in the dynamic environment of launch and then that mortar fire event that I talked about, that the camera will continue to operate. And then we had to swap out a couple pieces on the inside because in the vacuum of space, they had the ability to outgas material. And if that material deposited itself on the detector, then we wouldn't get the clear images that we actually got. But other than that, it was not specially designed for use for this application. It is a commercial off-the-shelf camera.
Thank you. And up next, we have Michael Sheets from CNBC.
Hi, congratulations again on capturing stunning footage of this landing. I'm curious on two aspects. I mean, one, Adam Seltzer, you know, you guys had said that in 15 years since he really engineered the sky crane, he never actually seen it in operation. I'm curious what Adam thinks about seeing this work on the planet, and secondarily, how this informs and how being able to actually see the landing informs future missions, even as NASA looks to one day land astronauts. You know, what does this really teach you about trying to get people on the surface of Mars?
Well, let's see. Adam's not up here, but I can channel him for just a moment, perhaps, and tell you that you know, this is a thrill of a lifetime. I think not just for Adam, but all the people that contributed to this architecture development. Back on Curiosity, I remember when we first briefed this system, you know, with the supersonic parachutes and you know, multi-body systems, and we're going to lower this thing on a tether, and people just looked at us like we were insane, you know. And Adam and his team, of which Al was part, you know, they kept at it, and they explained why it made sense. They explained why it was robust. They explained why it would work. It was not easy to build, I will tell you that, as the flight system manager on Curiosity. But once you build it and once you test it, it's something that really is designed inherently to interact with the uncertainties that Mars throws at you. And so I think being able to see his system operate like this, you know, in high definition, landing at Jezero, you know, it doesn't get too much better than that, I don't think. So I'm going to throw it to Al. He can maybe say a few words about the types of technologies and information that we have on the technologies on the system and information we got getting back from EDL and will be getting back as part of our reconstruction activity that feed into the future.
Yeah, I mean, I think we can talk about a lot of things. I mean, but as Matt as Matt mentioned, as a fresh-faced kid when the Sky was invented, and I was in that room, and it's amazing to see it finally in action. Even though we knew it worked once, we didn't know for sure it was going to work again. And then for it to work again, and then for us to see it is incredible. And just starting with the Sky Crane there, you can see some things that I think are going to be useful to the future. One thing that's, of course, of a lot of interest, especially as we start landing bigger things, is the plume ground interaction. The interaction between those rockets and what they're doing to the ground and how they kick things around. And we've got great video of that here this time, both from the rover download camera and the descent stage download camera. We can see how those, how they create those scours and stuff gets pushed together and creates a sheet underneath the rover. We can see that all occurring. So that's super useful. The parachute stuff too, one thing we didn't show necessarily here is that the parachute upload cameras, the two that we got, are at 75 frames per second. So we can see that inflation, that only occurs in 0.7 seconds, in less than a second. And see that snap open and look at all the details of how it unfolds and how it's symmetrically inflated. And all those things are very useful for future missions, both whether they're landing more things in people or stuff and then people. SRL, other missions are going to use, future missions like the sample retrieval missions, are likely going to use things like parachutes and rockets, of course. So we're very interested in seeing how those cameras and what we see in those camera images can teach us about how those systems are actually performing and make our systems more robust in the future.
Thanks, Alan. Matt. Up next, we have Ken Chang from the New York Times.
Hi, thank you. I was wondering if you can give me a few more details about how the data came back. So it was 30 gigabytes that was collected. How much has come back, and what was the data rate that you were able to send them information back? Thank you.
Maybe Jessica can...
So I can say that as part of our commissioning activity, we actually walk the data rate up over the course of our different overflights with the orbiters. And so we start with a lower rate, 2,000, 8,000, and then we increase that into an adaptive data rate with the orbiter, in which we can continue to go many megabits, 2 meg, 8 meg, and then much further beyond that over the course. The total volume that I don't have off the top of my head, and so maybe, I don't know if that's something that Dave or we can provide for you later.
Justin, do you have how many images we got back?
Yeah, we counted. So we counted yesterday that we're releasing today. There was about 4,500 that we've gotten so far that we're pushing out to the web today. And I will mention that when the orbiters fly overhead, the comm passes typically return, let's say, 500 to 900 megabits per pass. And we've had, I don't know, well, we've had a lot of them now, like 5 or 10 of them.
We've typically had about 2 to 3 overflights per night, and it does vary. The rates I was referring to are the communication rates from the rover to the orbiter. And then once that's collected, then we're anywhere from, some passes will be smaller, 80 to 100, and where we've had other passes which have been significant amounts of data up at 700. And so it is variable per orbiter and per orientation.
Yeah. And I want to add one more thing I wanted to mention about the camera technology and then this data. We haven't mentioned it, but in addition to use commercial cameras, we're using a commercial computer, an Intel-based PC that's running Linux, open source. So it's the first open source, at least that I know of, open source Linux box running on the surface of Mars. Actually inside the rover, it's quite compact. And so there's the Linux operating system. And we compress the video using FFmpeg, which is another open source tool. So thank you to the open source community for allowing us to use your amazing software. Appreciate it.
I just very briefly, I just want to note, as Jessica said, you saw some of the terrific imagery from the Mars Reconnaissance Orbiter. We've been getting fantastic support from the orbiter community, not just MRO for both that imagery and the comms, but also from MAVEN, which is a Goddard spacecraft, from Odyssey, one of our older orbiters, and for the ESA European Trace Gas Orbiter as well. Some of the biggest data volume passes we've had brought back a lot of this imagery, came from our partners in Europe, and so thank you all to them.
Great, and up next on the phone lines is Mike Wall from space.com.
Thank you all for doing this, and yeah, Yeah, it's really amazing video. Thanks for sharing it. Just a question for Dave. What do you anticipate doing maybe with the EDL mic now that it's up and running? Do you see it having any kind of diagnostic uses during the deployments of the robotic arm and sort of like the instrument checkouts and so forth? I mean, what do you see it doing aside from recording Martian wind and the sound of the dirt under the wheels and so on? Thank you.
Yes, we've had a lot of discussion about how we might be able to use both the EDO cam microphone and the super cam microphone to do those type of diagnostic stuff. I mean, the ops team right now, I don't want to speak for Jessica, but they're focused on getting the system deployed, and capturing noise of that is definitely not the first priority. They need to focus on getting this vehicle ready to perform some amazing science. But that doesn't mean in the future we could not sit down and discuss the possibility of capturing audio files of an actuator as it actually spins on the surface of Mars. The noise is an incredible thing that engineers can use to basically detect the health of moving systems, gears and actuators and things like that. And so if we get a snapshot of a actuator today, and you can compare over time, do another snapshot, another audio file of that actuator in the future, compare the two and see if there's anything that can be learned in terms of the health of that device. Now, with that said, I do need to remind everybody that the microphone that's in the EDO camera system, just like all of the cameras and other hardware, is off-the-shelf hardware. It is not designed to live in the hostile environment of Mars. It gets down 120 degrees plus below zero at night, and then it warms up significantly more in the day to, minus 40 or something like that. So those temperature cycles and that cold temperature are going to significantly limit the life of these devices. They're just not designed to last for long periods of time. The SuperCam microphone might continue to work. It actually is designed a little bit more for this particular environment. It can last longer. So I think, as you heard, I think Dr. Z mentioned earlier, we're always surprised by how rugged and robust some of our items are, how long they actually last. They continue to operate far longer than we designed them. We've gotten pretty lucky over the last couple of days. Perhaps we'll get lucky and the hardware will continue to operate on the surface of Mars and allow us to do those type of diagnostic things in the future. I don't know, Jess, you want to add anything more about how you might consider using them?
Well, I can say that application was one of the things that we had projected.
Oke, ini saya ingatkan kembali, ini saya juga masih menyimak bagaimana jalannya press conference dan membahas beberapa fakta tentang Perseverance. Tadi juga kita sempat melihat rekaman audio ya, atau mendengarkan. Jadi nanti ini saya sembari menyimak press conference, sebelum nanti saya recap menjadi satu videonya dari mulai video pendaratan aslinya tadi, berbagai foto terbaru, dan audio yang ditangkap oleh Perseverance. Jadi masih banyak bahan yang harus saya recap. Dari press conference ini bisa saya mulai terlebih dahulu. Jadi nanti mungkin akan tayang jam 7 atau jam 8 untuk semua recapnya dari live kali ini, mulai dari proses pendaratan video aslinya, beberapa foto terbaru, dan audio yang berhasil direkam oleh Perseverance, dan akan disusul oleh beberapa update selanjutnya. Jadi untuk recap dari live kali ini akan kita tayangkan sekitar jam 7 atau 8, dan tidak menutup kemungkinan akan lebih cepat tergantung bagaimana nanti NASA sudah mengupload berbagai medianya di website Perseverance. Jadi saat ini saya sedang fokus untuk memperhatikan bagaimana press conference tentang apa yang dibicarakan agar nanti bisa dijadikan recap. Oke, jadi kita langsung kembalikan lagi ke NASA. Mari kita dengarkan lagi bagaimana jalannya press conference kali ini.
Our little microphone will hang in there for some of those events.
Great. And up next is Lisa Grossman from Science News.
Hi, thanks for taking my question. The video is amazing, and a lot of it looks a lot like the animations that you've shown before the landing to kind of advertise this. Excuse me. Going forward, how will you distinguish the video that is the real video from the animations to kind of make it clear to people what they're looking at and keep them from getting confused or not be fuel for conspiracy theorists saying we haven't actually done this?
I guess I could try to take that one. I mean, I think we should label very clearly which ones are from Mars and not. I think it's clear to a lot of us, but I think you're right, given the way that the animation's been pretty good. I get a sense for for how that could be confusing. I think we should label them going forward. Now that we have this kind of video, we should be clear about what's real.
What a great problem to have.
Exactly. I mean, it's an amazing problem to have.
Justin, do you have anything, any thoughts?
Yeah, I can attest to it's real. It's actually real. I know because I know the data very well. It's stunning and it's real. And that was our thought too when we first saw it. We're like, wow, this looks like doesn't look real, but it is, and that's what's so amazing about it. And you know, I know I've seen some of the video games are getting pretty good. You know, if second glance you look at a sports game and it looks like it's real, but it's fake. But this is actually real stuff, and that's why it's so exciting. And I actually just want to say, for those of you that want to go watch the videos, personally I like watching like quarter speed or even slower because there's so much detail in there that anyone who's done animations knows that would take a lot of time to do. And it all happened so quickly, and the camera cut everything, and so that's how we know it's real because we know so much about these systems. But there's just so much detail that's one way that you could look at. But yeah,
there's one other thing I forgot too. I remember early on MSL when they started coming up with the animation for Curiosity's landing, we had a discussion about the plumes actually coming out of this end stage, and the fact that they were clear and that you wouldn't see them in real life, like you don't see them in the rover upload camera. But we thought that it would be that people would be expecting to see them in the animation, so they took some artistic license in putting them there. So here I can tell you now that hopefully our future animations will show the right thing and show the clear plumes like you see in the real video.
Yeah, and the same comment for the exquisite detail on the rover. If you actually look at every cal target's in place, every little twist, every tie, cable tie, they're all there. In the animations, you usually don't have that. When you get down to that level of detail, at least now you typically don't, because a lot of the things happen kind of last minute, and as the rover's getting built and people slap things on and they're not in the drawing, so the animators don't pick it up. And that's another thing that's amazing about this video. Every single detail is in there, so encourage people to look at it. It's fun.
Yeah. Thanks, Justin. It really is some beautiful detail. Now we have a social media question to take. Jerome on Twitter asks, some pictures we can see dirt and small rocks inside the real wheel rim. Was this expected, and will it become an issue if more dust and sand is picked up along the way?
Yep, I can speak to that. So it's not uncommon for us to have rocks and dirt inside the wheels, either from the landing event or as we're driving across the surface. You'll also notice on the deck, we also experienced some of that debris coming down on top of the rover. And we design our mechanisms for these conditions so we don't expect any issue with the material from the landing event or as we continue to rove across the surface.
Thanks, Jessica. And right now we have a call from Eric Berger on ARS Technica.
Yes, hi. Thank you very much for doing this. Congratulations on such a stunning array of photos and videos. Al Chen mentioned the dust earlier, and it was striking as the spacecraft got close to the surface how much was kicked up. It's a 1-ton rover. It's pretty sizable, but when you're talking about human missions, it's much larger. And so, what does being able to see this dust tell us about the challenge of landing future kind of much larger spacecraft on Mars? Is that something that you're going to have to account for, and if is it going to be a really significant issue to deal with? Thank you.
Yeah, I think I can take that one. I mean, I think, as most people know, right there, as far as I'm aware, there are no landing pads on Mars or barges that we can land on, prepared places. So we're going to have to deal with, especially if we're going to use propulsion, we're going to have to deal with this plume-ground interaction. And it's really difficult. It's difficult to get right, to get the modeling right, to get to understand it, or even to do a real test that shows a good impression of what you're going to come down on, especially when you don't know exactly where you're going and what the terrain is like and what the ground properties are where you're coming down. So I do think this is a big challenge for us going forward. And that's why collecting this information here is useful. We can certainly begin to see how it actually behaved in real life and see how things began to move and what those scours are like. and we have a vehicle that'll tell us what the ground that we happen to land on was like, and we know how we were commanding those engines and where they were pointed. So we have a rich treasure trove here of data that we can use to kind of get at that kind of challenge. Because I do think it's a big one, especially as we start to land heavier and heavier things with bigger and bigger engines.
And up next on the phone lines is Joey Roulette from The Verge.
Hey, thanks for doing this. Earlier it was mentioned that scientists are already pouring through the thousands and thousands of images, and I was just wondering what about the surface or the rocks that you guys have seen so far from these images are standing out, and kind of what has been interesting from a scientific perspective. Thanks.
Ken, Ken's there?
Yeah.
Okay, Ken.
Sure. So you can go online and see that image that was put up during my little bit there. But we're noticing basically the different colors that we see and textures and tones. And so one thing that's striking to me, standing out to me and some of us, is that a lot of the rocks that are labeled as light rocks seem to have a rough texture, whereas some of the darker rocks further afield that are higher standing, more like large boulders, seem to be smoother. That can mean something about the grain size and the potentially the composition of the rocks themselves. One of the things we're noting as the resolution gets better is that these light rocks closer to the foreground may actually be kind of dark on the inside, and that the light tone we see may be largely due to dust covering, and where the rocks stand up a bit higher and have less dust, they tend to appear dark. So a lot of, new patterns are emerging. And then, of course, one of the most exciting and interesting things are these, what we call the holy rocks, that are, in some cases right under our wheels, and these smaller cobbles that are right around the rover. I didn't mention, but, one of the possibilities for those holes is that they are what we would call vesicles, which would be due to gas escape from a volcanic rock. We're not calling them vesicles at this point because it's important for us to stay open to the different possible interpretations and not get locked in yet on limited data. But if they are volcanic rocks, that is enormously important to us, because it potentially provides an opportunity to get a really nice radiometric age or an absolute date if a sample like that comes back to Earth. But then again, if you go back to images from many previous Mars missions, rovers and otherwise, you'll see that wind abrasion can cause those sorts of holes in all different types of rocks. So just a few of the thoughts that are emerging, and then of course we're starting to get views of the Delta Front now, which just have us, on cloud nine, looking at some of the targets further afield that we're excited to explore.
Great. Thanks, Ken. We have another phone line question. Mark Zastro from Astronomy Magazine.
Hi. Thanks for taking my question. I guess this is a question for Al. And I was just wondering if you could speak to the performance of the landing vision system, if you've gotten a chance to dive into that, how the range figure and terrain relative navigation really performed, and just sort of what it was thinking, how it was making its decisions as it descended. And then when you look at its performance and its accuracy, how do you judge it? And can you see that improvement over Curiosity?
Yeah, that'd be great. I was really hoping for a chance to speak to that a little bit, actually. The lander vision system, as part of the terrain relative navigation system, really did great. In fact, here's some stats, right? Based on the targeted, well, we took many images on the way down. We got tons of landmarks. We were very able to match up what we saw with our onboard map. It was almost perfect, better than many of our field tests or even simulations. So we got a very good lock on where we were. And in fact, when you combine that with our safe target selection and where we flew to, we only missed the targeted pixel by about 5 meters. So we were aiming for a particular spot on the planet once it decided what was reachable and what the safest spot was. And given how well the lander vision system performed and our system in flying us there, we only missed by 5 meters. So that was really great. I think we've really showed that this system can do what we wanted it to do in helping us figure out where to go and go to a safe spot.
Great. Thanks, Al. We have so many questions coming in that we are going to keep the phone lines open for a little while longer. Remember to press *1 to get in our queue. For now, I'm going to take a social media question from Bob on Twitter, who asks, how does the processing power of the onboard computer compare to a great smartphone? Matt, do you want to take that one?
Yeah, sure. That's a good question. You know, in the space business, we have to build things that we know are gonna work. And space is a pretty hostile environment, and the surface of Mars is even worse with the temperature swings, which we were talking about. You know, you need systems that are capable of dealing with the radiation and the temperatures and really perform with very high reliability. So as a result of that, we have a tendency to use systems that have been around for a while, that are well shaken out. And on Perseverance, we're using the same computer that we used on Curiosity, in large part because we know it worked, and we wanted to have that successful flight heritage that we had from the previous mission. So this is a computer that you know, you would have found 15 or maybe even 20 years ago that we're flying. Having said that, these EDL cameras, which we were just talking about, are off the shelf, you know, state-of-the-art, new technology, and it is always a thrill for us when we have the opportunity, like we did in this particular application, to bring that kind of technology into our systems. It's a very powerful way to multiply our functionality and our capability. And so this was a great example of being able to use new technology. So I don't know if that's an exact answer to the question, but in short, that's a summary.
Great. Thank you, Matt. And Thomas, we actually have a question for you coming in.
Oke teman-teman, jadi untuk live dari NASA kita akhiri dulu sampai di sini, karena kita juga sedang ada gangguan dari tadi masalah koneksi, dan sebelum kita terputus lagi, jadi mending saya akhiri dulu. Dan gak usah khawatir, tetap akan kami recap ulang ya. Jadi semuanya bakal kita recap, jadikan video 1 besok dari semua tayangan dan live kali ini akan di recap. Oke, jadi kita akan mulai untuk mengakhiri live-nya sebelum internet benar-benar terputus. Terima kasih atas kehadirannya seluruh subscriber ataupun orang yang belum subscribe. Saya ucapkan terima kasih atas kehadirannya pada dini hari ini. Semoga semuanya berjalan lancar. Dan saya kira untuk berjalannya live dari NASA juga akan segera berakhir dengan ditutup oleh pembahasan press conference tadi. Jadi kali ini juga akan segera kami tutup dan kami akan langsung recap semua videonya, penjelasannya, dan lain sebagainya. Dan akan kita upload secepat mungkin, kalau bisa jam 7 sampai jam 8 pagi nanti. Atau kalau bisa lebih cepat, lebih baik. Oke, saya Junar Fikir Abdullah dan Ardiansah selaku moderator dari komentar kalian live chat mengucapkan banyak terima kasih atas partisipasinya pada live kali ini, dan semoga kalian dapat menjalani hari dengan baik. Oke, sampai jumpa di live selanjutnya.